All right, so we've made our Suzanne, but we need to render her out. So if I hit 0 to see what my camera sees, I get that. Uh-oh, well, that's not really great, is it? So in this video, we're going to go over how to control that camera a little bit more. Controlling the camera is a great time to get into quad view. So I'm going to hit Control Option G, and here I can see Suzanne, and here I can see my camera. So in this case, I want to leave Suzanne alone. Normally, I'd probably say, well, she's too big. I should have started the whole thing a little bit smaller. But I'm actually just going to use this as a way of exploring how this camera can be positioned. So in the quad view, I really just need to move this camera further away from her. So I can use my middle button and rotate out to move that camera a little further away. And in the top view, I mean, I like that angle. I'm going to go ahead and move this out a little bit. And then in the front view, I'm going to move it up. And you can see how this is changing how it's framing Suzanne. And then I think I will move this over a little bit. Now you can also rotate the camera. So you can rotate it either in one of these views, or you can actually rotate it in here if you want to. I'm going to not, but I am going to rotate it in this view. So I want it to center on Suzanne. And then in this case, maybe it's a little too high. So I'll move it down and rotate it up. And you can see it's because it's at an angle to this grid. I'm going to have to rotate it in both the front and the right views a little bit. And then I'll move this back down a hair. Okay, that's pretty good. So she's almost perfectly aligned with the scene. But now we actually need to change some things in the camera itself. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Alt Q to get back to my camera view. Again, camera view is 0. And I'm actually going to change some of my camera settings. So if I liked my camera settings, probably it would be a good idea to just continue to reposition the camera. But in this camera tab in your properties inspector, you can see that you can control all the camera settings in here. Now, if you have a photography background, go to town. All this should look familiar to you. In this case, if I change the focal length to be a little bit further out to 30 millimeters, then I can see more of the scene. So this is making it basically, the smaller the number, the more wide angle the lens, basically. I can also adjust things like the f-stop, and we'll get into this much later on. We can add mist, we can control the sensor. We can make this simulate a particular type of camera. So if I have, let's see, what's a good one? Whoops, not those ones. I don't want a Hero because those are super wide angle. But like if I have a Canon 1100D, that would be nice, right? I could simulate that sensor if I wanted to. We don't really have enough settings in here to make a difference in that. So I'm going to go back to, actually I'm going to just Command Z to undo that because I don't remember what those settings were. Oh, I can't. Okay, well, let's go back to the Blender default. There we go. And then I'll zoom this back out again. Perfect. So now I can see all of Suzanne, and it looks pretty good. I'll make it a little bit tighter. And then we can render this. So again, go to this. So this is the actual camera. This little camera here is where the rendering is. Now, the render is a default to 1920 by 1080. This is standard HD video size, and we'll use it for most of our exercises. When we get to the major projects, I'll be asking you to change this to 3000 by 2000 or larger sizes. So that's fine, but for now we'll leave it at this. But we also want to change this resolution to 100% because right now it's rendering out half of the size. So instead of having a height of 1080 pixels, it has a height of 540 pixels. So if I change this to 100%, it's going to render out the full 1920 by 1080. As we go along, we're also going to want to change things like anti-aliasing, which has to do with sort of the quality of the edge. And we might want to get into how shading is performed. But these are things that we're not going to get into until we start learning about textures. Finally, down at the bottom, you can actually have it output images to a particular folder. We'll get to this when we get to animation. And you can also set what kind of image it's going to export. We're going to stick with pings for now. Whoops. You can set it to be RGB, black and white or RGBA. RGBA means that there's an alpha channel, and then you can change the color depth to 8 or 16. We'll leave it at these default settings for now, and we'll also leave the compression. Again, the compression has to do with the quality of how that final image looks. So it's worth doing some comparisons between 100% compression and 0% compression, because you'll see a pretty big difference. But once I have that set up how I want, the really important thing is changing this to 100%. That's the only thing you really need to do. Then I can click render. It renders out that image, and then I can go to image and save as image. You'll want to save this as your last name, Suzanne, saving it as a ping, and then you're going to upload that ping to Canva.